Alright, in this example we're going to take a look at double shadows, or how to combine shadows from two different passes so that you don't get little problem halos. So first of all we'll set this up and show you the problem, and then we'll go back and we'll fix it. So what I have here is a teapot and a plane, camera, and this little area light here. And then also hidden, I have this little box, and it's actually just out of frame, and it's going to cast a shadow into our scene, but for now we're going to hide it. So first thing we're going to do is let's just render this frame. Okay, so here's our teapot on the plane, and let's go ahead and save this, and we'll call this enva. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to create a shadow pass for to use in our composite, and I'll show you the halo problem that happens with the shadows. So what we're going to do is we need to create, or actually change these so that they're now matte objects. Okay, so now the plane and the teapot are going to catch shadows for us. The box is not set up that way, but he's out of frame, so it doesn't matter. And now we should be set up to get a shadow pass, I believe. Let's check. Yep, okay. Okay, so here's the alpha channel. RGB is black, that's the way shadow passes are supposed to be. And we've got the shadow coming in and hitting the teapot and covering a little bit different portion of the ground plane. So let's call this shadow A. And let's head over to Fusion and look at the problem that happens. Okay, so here is our scene, and let's say we've composited in, some other object that's going to cast shadows into our scene. Maybe there's a character off screen that walks into frame or something, but we need the shadows to be separated. So what we'll do is we'll connect these up, and when you connect these, take a look at what happens down here. It's real subtle, so let me brighten it up a little bit so you can see it better. Okay, see this little halo that's happening in there? It's following the edges of the shadow. Well, that's a problem, and we need to fix that. Now, there is only one good way of fixing that, and that is that you get these shadows in one pass together. Also, the shadows that are happening on this teapot, we need to work that out too. If we look at this pass, see we got this area is in bright light, and when we merge this on top, that bright edge is just showing through a little bit, just because the these pixels right here are not completely white or black. They're some value of gray, and it's letting some of that light come through. So how do we fix it? Let's go back over to Max and let's start splitting this up. It's going to require a little bit of extra work to get this to go back together properly. Okay, so first thing we need to do is we're going to need to get these guys back to being regular, not matte objects. Okay, let's hide that guy for now. And let's see, the teapot. Yeah, let's hide the teapot as well. We're going to render this scene with just the ground plane. Okay, and we'll call this env ground. And now we're going to change it to be a matte object, catching shadows. And let's unhide the teapot. But what we're going to want to do with the teapot is we're going to make its properties so that it's not visible to camera. So it's going to cast shadows on the ground, but we're not going to actually see it in the render. Okay, so RGB is black, and then in the alpha we have just the teapot's shadow. So we'll call this shadow teapot. Alright, so let's hide that guy. We will unhide the box. And it's out of frame, so we can keep the same settings, render again. Alright, here's the shadow of just the box on the ground. So we'll save that out. Alright, and now we need to get the teapot in there, so let's unhide the teapot. And we're going to change it back so it's now visible. We don't want the ground, so let's hide the ground. So all we need to do is get the teapot, and we need the shadows that hit that teapot as well. So the best way to do that is actually to leave this object in the scene, casting the shadows onto the teapot. Now if this box was in frame, we would need to set its properties so that it was not visible to camera, but since it's out of frame, we don't need to worry about it. But like I said, if this was an animation that was a character walking into frame, then you'd need to do it. But for just the still image, we're fine. So let's render that. Okay, so here's our teapot with the shadow of the box on it. So we'll call that T. Alright, let's go back over to Fusion. I think we've got everything we need now. Okay, we'll just slide everything over. Ground is going to be first, and we know that the teapot is going to be last, so let's hook them up. Alright, now in between here we need the box and the teapot shadows. So let's combine those in. Okay, that's looking good. And now, if we connect these up, is our problem gone? Let's see. Let me get a little brightness contrast out here so we can bring up the gain. Yep, it's gone. Let's take a look at, well, let's combine these together right here. Alright, if we look at the alpha channel now, these are combining together exactly right. They're the gray values that are in the shadow here are adding together, and that's the correct result. That's what we want to have happen. So problem is gone now. Now it matches the render straight out of Max if they were all rendered at the same time. Now looking at this, it's kind of a pain in the butt to break all this stuff out. For this simple scene, it's not really so bad, but imagine if our environment was a lot more complex than this. We wouldn't want to be separating out every object that needed to have the character or box cast shadows onto it separate from the ground plane. It gets really messy and complicated. There is another way you could do this that is a little bit more limiting, but it is easier and has less passes, and that would be to, let's unhide everything and check all the properties here. Okay, we want this to go back to normal, And what we do, again, if this were a character that walks into frame, we would make it not visible to camera. So I'll just do that, even though it won't matter. Just render your lighting paths just like this. And there you go, you've got the shadows, it's falling properly on the teapot, and if that character walks into frame you won't see him, and you can render him separately, comp him back on. There you go, one pass and problem solved. The issue with doing it this way though is if the animation on the character or the box or whatever happens to be changes, then you're going to be re-rendering your environment pass, and that can be kind of a problem because often environment passes take a lot longer to render than a character pass. So you need to be real careful and decide, is it going to be faster to do one pass with the environment and re-render everything together, or is it actually going to be faster to separate your character and environment completely like we did here and have controls so that if we needed to, all you'd have to do is re-render the one pass instead of all the others. So just something to think about.